All right, so thank you for joining us again for Cherished Moments. Here with me, I have a good friend. She is an author. She'll tell you more about that, but she is also an advocate for healing. But what has her in the seat today is that she is a mom. So would you please welcome LaRonda Howard?
Thank you.
Yes, so LaRonda, would you tell us a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
your book, and also about your family?
Sure. So I am a single mom. I'm divorced. I'm a mom to a 10-year-old girl,
Yes.
my daughter, and I'm just so proud of her. She's doing well at school, and I'm grateful that I co-parent well with my ex. I've heard stories, unfortunate horror stories of people that don't have that kind of experience. So I'm grateful for that. I don't take that for granted that I'm able to, really work with him and make sure she must see us 50-50.
Right.
Like we almost split that almost in half throughout the year. So that's a blessing that because she is a daddy's girl.
Oh, wow.
So she loved her mama, but she definitely loved her dad. So I don't want to take that away because as hard as it is to go through a divorce, something you never expect to happen, I want to make sure she feels the love from both parents as much as she can. So yeah, that's the mom side of me. The healing part of me happened because of my own journey with my healing, stemming from this trauma from my childhood, dealing with low self-esteem, that ended up because of bullying. That was part of it. It was always a part of me for whatever reason. Like the enemy started young with me feeling insecure about myself, but it was compounded when I was bullied mainly, and I would say it started a little bit in middle school around 6th grade, but it really took off in high school. So I just was just got bullied for everything, for being too hairy, to being too tall, to having full lips, to wearing glasses, the gamut.
Right. Kids are cruel.
And I always say that kids can definitely be cruel, and that's why I really try to make sure my daughter understand both sides of it. Stand up for yourself, but also don't be a bully. Really, show compassion to those that may be, socially awkward or what have you. Like really try to teach her both sides. So yeah, absolutely. Good. So that's me and how I started my healing journey much later in life. I wish, now that I know what I know, and my parents didn't know what they knew.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't know how to help me with those things. When they found I was being bullied, they definitely, nipped that in the bud. They stepped in, made sure that wasn't happening. But at that point, I started beating myself up. I started bullying myself. I didn't realize that what it was until recently. Like in the last few years, I realized the enemy no longer had to have somebody else do it. I was doing it to myself. I knew how to bully myself really well. So that kind of, from that experience of being in high school and going to college, the first one in my family to go to college, I felt the pressure to be perfect. Like I never felt like my parents said it, but in so many ways I felt like I gotta be on the first one. I'm the oldest. I have this responsibility. I gotta make sure. And that was always the thing that I had going for myself. I didn't feel like I was the most beautiful girl, but I felt like Sparks in the books, that was me. Like I always was that girl that got good grades and that kind of thing. And so when I got to college, and then I was working part-time, but that's when I really got into having a boyfriend. I never really technically had a boyfriend in high school, but I really didn't have a true boyfriend until my freshman year in college, and that changed everything as far as like I saw myself in him. Like I just, he was the first one to say I love you, and all of these things that I never heard, like, oh gosh, somebody interested in me, like a guy. And so he had already, he was out of college, so he was like a year or two out of college. So we're 4 years apart.
Okay.
And so we met each other at work. I was working a retail store part-time, and that's how we met. And so he just knew how to woo me. He knew certain things about me. He knew how to become my boyfriend. And so from that, I started having sex, something I always said I wouldn't do until I got married. But before I knew it, I was going in that direction because I felt like I had to in a way to keep him interested in me. So, and I call myself loving him. So, like, why not? Why wouldn't I do it? I'm like, I always felt like I was the last one to bloom anyway. So I felt like everybody else been having sex. I guess I need to do this too. Even though in the inside of me at the same, it was like this war because I knew one part of me, my mom and I even had a brief conversation. They really never told me about the birds and the bees. But I remember a brief conversation we had in the car, and she asked me, was I having sex or anything? I said, no, Mom, I want to wait until I'm married, whatnot. So I carried that with me in high school, but I never was tempted in high school either. Like, this was, like I said, the first guy that really showed interest in me and carried through with it. And so, there was those times that I felt like, okay, I could end up pregnant, and then my period come on. I'm like, okay. But this one time, I didn't get my period, and it was like weeks, and I started having like some symptoms of being pregnant, and I kind of knew then, but I was just such in denial. By that point, I was a junior in college, and I was like, it cannot be happening. Right now in my life, I'm almost done with college. This cannot be. But the symptoms weren't going away, so I went to the health clinic on campus at the campus college that I was going to, and they confirmed what I kind of pretty much knew. I had taken a home pregnancy test, but still was just in denial.
Right.
I just couldn't believe what the test was saying, and even her telling me and telling me, at that point when I got to the health clinic, me and him had talked. My boyfriend at the time, and he had said that, okay, let's get an abortion. First time I never ever heard that term, abortion, like, abortion never even crossed my mind. But when he said that, it was just like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. You're not ready. He already had a little one. His son probably was like 2 or 3 at most, had been through a divorce. And I was thinking like, okay, I'm still in college. My parents expect me to graduate, not be pregnant, out of wedlock, all these things that I was thinking like, I'm a church girl, like all of that, like all the guilt and shame that I felt that came with that, being a out of wedlock parent, mom. So I was just like, this can't be. So I was just in agreement from that point on, even before I met with the doctor. So when she said, hey, you absolutely are pregnant, I, at that point, realized that this is what we're going to do. And I told her, she asked what I was going to do. And then I just never forget, she said, you don't want to go that route. Like my sister did it, she had an abortion, and she lived to regret it. I just don't think you want to do that, LaRonda. But at that point, I was sold on the idea of abortion. We were going through with it. It made sense at the time to me. So came home, told him, he started making the appointment. He paid for it. It wasn't in local. I remember we had to travel at least 2 hours or so from where we lived, and then that was that. And so I thought, my life was fine. That's over with. I felt relief for a short moment, but it was just in the back of my mind. It was like always constant. Like the enemy started taunting me, and just like, you did that. Like something you never thought. You said you wanted children. So all these negative thoughts about what I did, and just the condemnation, the guilt, the shame, all of that just would resurface, and then as soon as it resurfaced, I tried to suppress it. Like as soon as it will pop up in my mind, I'm like, okay, found a way to, whether it was shopping, whatever it was, I was trying to distract myself from having those thoughts. And then it just came to a point that I could no longer forget it. Like I just had to come to grips, and I remember even before I really wanted to own what I did, I had to tell my parents because we broke up. We had been dating, like I said, all through college, and then when I finished college, I couldn't find a job in the city that I was going to school at, and so realized that I needed to come back home. My parents were like, why don't you come back home, try to find work. My parents are like an hour from Jacksonville. They said, why don't you try and find work in Jacksonville? And I was like, good point, because it's not happening here where I am now. So found work here, moved within 6 months of graduating. And so with that said, I was like, this relationship was really rocky anyway. So at that point, I was like, okay, done with the relationship, fresh start. And at that point, I felt like, because he had my parents' phone number, my parents' home number, I was like, he may blackmail me. Because he made me upset. And so I started thinking of these things. I was like, I got to beat him to the punch. I got to tell my parents. And that was so hard, But I did. I got the courage to tell my mom and told my dad. And it wasn't the best, conversation I had to have with my parents. My mom was totally upset. She couldn't believe that I didn't say anything. And it was like the complete opposite of what the enemy told me. Like, I thought that I would be, right. I was thinking they would be so against it, but it was like, why did you say something? And then, shortly after I terminated my pregnancy, then found out my cousin was pregnant, like others, and people in my family was welcoming. Of course it wasn't the best situation, but they wasn't like telling her that she needed an abort.
Right.
My brother, a little bit later, having his first child within that same year. So it was like, I started seeing all my family members around my age range having them, their child, and I'm like, well, here I am, I aborted mine. But, and then my dad, he was sympathetic, which I figured he would be. So, that passed, and like I said, a little bit later on, and some years had passed, and I realized, okay, this is not going away. And because I was beating myself and not forgiving myself, and I just remember being, remember being in my car, and God was like, I forgive you, you gotta forgive yourself, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it just hit me. I just boo-hoo cried in that very moment. And that was the start of my healing journey.
Nice.
That really was like, I finally owned up to it. It was like my subconscious and just what I was saying in my head, I just finally released.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I realized that I need to, release that, but I also started to tell people. So I started telling, like I told, and I would have never thought I would say, because I had said I would go into the grave with my secret, with my story of having an abortion. And I just remember, I felt I got the courage and felt safe enough to tell maybe it was like 2 or 3 of my friends at that time, and I just blurted it out, and I was like, I don't know what y'all about to say, what me's telling us, but they were so, comforting and encouraging me, like, they just was supportive of the fact that I was finally able to say something. And then from there, like I said, I just started this journey of just realizing that God do love me, that I don't have to beat myself up anymore. And then probably like a couple of short years later, I got involved with First Coast Women's Services, and I found out through him because of God laid on my heart to start this project of having others tell their testimony of what things that they've been through. And I started with telling my own story. So I realized that in the Black community, a lot of us don't feel safe or able to be vulnerable enough to share our story about our abortion. So me and 2 other ladies just felt like God was calling us to do this. And so we created an event where people would come and hear our testimony. And it was powerful. And from that, I had First Coast Women's Service. I knew of them, and I had them come out because I'm like, if somebody in this audience is dealing with what we're dealing or dealt with and haven't had any healing, I want them to be able to get that.
Let me interject right now.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
So the theme for this series is motherhood and grace. And so I wanted to say that we're not here to judge anybody's decision, but there may be a mom out there who did make a decision to terminate their pregnancy, and now you are dealing with guilt, you are dealing with shame. And so during this Mother's Day season, we want to invite you to receive healing for your heart, release yourself from shame. And LaRonda's story is so powerful. So how did grace show up in your story and your healing journey?
Well, God just showed me so much grace. Just, like I said, just being able to verbalize it and just to admit to Him, first and foremost, Him showing me how much He loved me, and just, allow me to have the fear. I know for me, am I going to be able to have a child? Like, I did this, I messed up.
Like a punishment.
Right, like, am I going to be punished and not be able to have another child? But He graced me with my daughter. And that's amazing in itself. I'm like, wow, God, you gave me a second chance at motherhood. He graced me with being connected with First Coast Women's Services. Like, an amazing organization that will help you. Like Racina said, that if you need post-abortion healing, anybody that's listening to us, man or woman, a lot of times we don't think about how the men are affected, but they are affected as well. And so if you're ready, or when that time comes that you're ready, just know that there are people that want to help you through that. But yeah, just the grace to get the healing I needed through the post-abortion healing program. And as well as grace of becoming a facilitator for that program. Like I was just so, I went in with like, why am I here? Like I remember, because I wanted to volunteer for the organization, and if you've had an abortion in your past, they want you to go through that program, which makes sense, because you really don't know what you don't know about your healing until you're in that class. But I remember feeling like, I don't need this, I'm good. At that point, I had written a book. Let me backtrack a little bit on Finding Freedom and Forgiveness. So I had that out about maybe a year, almost 2 years at that point. So I felt like I'm good. Like I don't need this program. But as soon as I allowed my heart to open to it, God just really showed Himself and really helped me understand. No, LaRonda, you still got some healing in this area and that area. So it was just powerful. So like I say, just the grace to go through that program, to then become a facilitator of that same program, helping other women, especially Black women. I have such a passion for helping other minorities go through that, because I just feel like in our community again, we're starting to really open up some more. I've noticed over the years, but we still got a lot of work to do in the area. And I just want to be that person, that advocate for that healing. But also, now I'm a center director at one of the centers, and I'm just grateful. I thank God every day, like, wow, God, it's full circle for me. Like, you've allowed me to be on the end where I never could have thought myself to gotten healing or even thought I needed it, to now being able to share my story often. I mean, I can't tell you how often that I share my story, whether they, choose to go down the path that I unfortunately had to go. I would say everybody got to have their test for their testimony. So maybe that's going to be a part of their testimony, but we're still here on the other side of it if they do make that choice. But for those that say, you know what, I don't want to, go through what you went through and choose to, parent or adopt. So I'm just, I'm full of, I see God's grace every day and just how He allows me to do the things that I get to do.
That's awesome. So quick question. So your past journey on your way to healing, right? How does that show up in your intentionality as a mom today?
Wow. Two parts. So one of the possible symptoms that you can have as a post-abortive woman is that you can become like a helicopter mom. Yeah, you can be overbearing. So I had to also realize I can't play God with my child. So God really had to teach me how to trust Him, that He has her more, He loves her more than I do. As much as I love her, He loves her more. So I had to realize that I can trust God with my child. But I definitely see that I'm more open with my daughter. I see that she knows that she don't really understand. She knows she had, I truly believe it was a boy. So she knows she has a brother in heaven. I recognize him. I acknowledge him when I never did before. Once I went through the healing program, I realized I can celebrate his life. And so I do that around the time that I would have had him. I try to make a point to celebrate his life, and she's with me when I do it, so she understands that. So I think for me that those are the ways that I show up, and just being vulnerable with her, like really being open. Of course, she's still young, so I don't share a lot of things that she can't handle, but I'm always asking the Holy Spirit, like, when is the appropriate time to talk about these sensitive topics that I really want her to understand. Sex, like right now it's like good touch, bad touch, like things like that, but as she's getting into puberty, I know that I have to have other conversations with her. So I'm just
that takes grace.
Come on. Like I look at my child now, I'm like, oh my God, you're going into this young woman. I see her body changing. I'm like, oh God.
Oh yeah. I've been through that.
Yes.
I guess
you're gonna have to help me as a fellow mom.
Yes.
Help me how to get through that.
There's grace and a space for that, for sure.
But I'm happy that she still like play with teddy bears and
Yeah.
dolls. Like
Yes.
she's not trying to grow up too soon, and that's what
Good,
I'm like.
good.
Be a
She still has
child.
this innocence
Yes,
about her.
like be a
Yeah.
child for as
That's
long as
good.
you want. I'm not
That's
pushing
good.
you, and but she knows that she can talk to me, and that's
That's
why
good.
I'm always asking her how was her day at school.
Mhm.
You know, what was the good thing, what was the not so good. Like let's talk about it because I wanted to start that young, so that when she goes through those tough things,
Right.
she can come
And
out.
that was essentially
right.
what you took from your past.
Absolutely,
You
'cause I
wanted-
didn't have that.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I could go to my mom.
Right, right.
And still sometimes today.
Right, right. I mean,
yeah, it's
yeah.
just the time that they grew up in. You
yeah,
didn't talk like
generation.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
Some things were taboo.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you just didn't be there open with your mom. And so I do my best to break that. I really want her to feel comfortable with talking to me. So yeah, those are the ways that I try to be very intentional about being a mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we just thank God for His grace. Yes.
Absolutely.
And I thank God for your story.
Thank you.
I thank you for sharing your healing journey. I myself consider those who made that choice, I consider them to still be moms.
Absolutely,
You
they
know?
are. They
Yeah.
are. I didn't realize that, but yeah, the moment that you have that baby in your tummy, you are a mom.
Yes, and so that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to cover this. It's a very sensitive topic.
Absolutely.
And again, we're not judging anyone who decides to make that decision, but if you have and you're in need of post-decision healing, you know, please let LaRonda's story be inspiring to you to seek help, to seek counseling, to get what you need for healing. You know, for by His stripes we are healed. And I know we use that verse for physical healing, but God wants us to prosper in our soul. He wants us to prosper physically, and so we just want to believe God with you. So LaRonda, could you tell us more or provide us contact information for First Coast Women's Services?
Absolutely. So my center, I give you my center number. So the main number for the location I'm at is 904-549-6122. We'll be more than happy to serve you. We offer free pregnancy tests, free ultrasound if you qualify. We have a parenting program. We give out diapers and wipes and maternity clothes, baby clothes if you need it. So we just want to serve our community however we can. And this will be a safe space. You know, like you said, we don't judge you. Several of us that serve in the ministry, in the organization, have been through what a person may be thinking, whether it's abortion or what have you. So we're not there to judge, but just to be a light. We really just want to pray with you if you have a religious belief. If you don't, that's fine too. We serve everybody, and we just want to be there for you.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me today
Yes.
and all of that good stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sis.